Greetings, dear seekers, dear companions on the path of mastery. There is a state that most people only glimpse for a moment and then lose. A state where you are no longer pulled by anxiety, no longer crushed by pressure, no longer standing in front of difficulty, hesitating. You still feel everything, but nothing controls you. You still face pressure, but nothing breaks you. And if you have ever met someone like this, you remember them. They are not loud. They don't try to appear strong. They don't prove anything. But there is something about them, a stillness that makes others uneasy, a calm that makes chaos feel irrelevant. And you find yourself wondering, why are they like this? Were they born that way, or do they have something that you don't? The truth is, they are not different. They were trained in a way most people never are, because most people today are not weak because they lack ability. They are weak because they were never trained correctly. They grew up in comfort. They learn to avoid discomfort. They react to emotions without ever noticing it, and then they call it personality. I'm just anxious. I get stressed easily. I can't handle pressure. But that is not identity. That is conditioning, like a wild horse that has never been trained. It is not weak. It is simply uncontrolled. And the most dangerous part is this. You can live your entire life like that without ever realizing it until one day pressure arrives, a meeting, a decision, a moment that demands clarity. Your heart races, your hands tighten, your mind begins to spiral, and you tell yourself, I'm not strong enough. But the truth is, you were never trained to be strong. Over 400 years ago, there was a man who understood this completely. Miyamoto Musashi. He was not just a swordsman. He was someone who pushed human training to its absolute limit, not to defeat others, but to reach a point where he could never be defeated by himself. He understood something most people never realize. Anxiety is not the enemy. Weakness is not destiny. They are simply untrained responses. And when you train correctly, anxiety becomes awareness. Pressure becomes fuel. Instability becomes control. But there is a cost most people refuse to pay, because this path is not about adding more. It is about removing dependence, removing avoidance, removing unconscious reaction, removing the fragile identity you keep trying to protect. Layer by layer, what you call anxiety begins to disappear. Not because it's gone, but because it no longer controls you. In this video, we are not going to talk about motivation. We are not going to talk about feeling better. We are going to walk through a transformation from anxiety to power, from reaction to control, from a person who breaks under pressure to a state where nothing inside you can be shaken. And the only question that remains is, are you willing to be trained that way? Part 1. Anxiety, the untrained mind. There is something you need to understand before anything can change. Anxiety is not your enemy, and it is not a flaw. It is a signal, a response, a system inside you that has never been trained properly. Most people believe anxiety means weakness, that if you feel nervous, if your heart races, if your thoughts spiral, there's something wrong with you. But that is not true. What you call anxiety is simply your mind reacting to something it does not understand, or something it has never learned to handle. Your brain was designed to protect you, to detect danger, to keep you alive. But here's the problem. Your brain cannot tell the difference between real danger and discomfort. A lion in front of you and a difficult conversation, a life-threatening situation and a moment of uncertainty. To your nervous system, they can feel the same, so it reacts. Your heart beats faster, your breathing changes, your thoughts begin to race, not because you are weak, but because your system has not been trained to stay still under pressure. It's like a wild horse, untamed, uncontrolled, full of energy, but without direction. The horse is not broken, it is not defective, it is simply untrained. And if you try to ride it like that, it will throw you off again and again until you believe that you are the problem, but you are not. You are just sitting on something you never learned to control. Look at how this shows up in your life. You overthink instead of acting. You delay instead of deciding. You avoid instead of facing. And it all feels logical. It feels like you are processing, like you are preparing, like you are waiting for the right moment. But beneath all of that, there is one thing: untrained reaction. You are not choosing your actions. You are responding to how you feel. And your feelings are being driven by a system you never learned to master. This is why people stay stuck, not because they don't know what to do, but because their internal state controls their behavior. They wait to feel confident, they wait to feel ready, they wait to feel calm, but those feelings never come on their own because they are not built through thinking. They are built through training. This is what Miyamoto Musashi understood. He did not try to eliminate fear. He did not try to feel better. He trained himself to function regardless of what he felt. Because he knew something simple. You don't rise to the level of your intention. You fall to the level of your training. If your mind is untrained, it will react. If your body is untrained, it will collapse. If your system is untrained, it will avoid, and you will call it anxiety. But once you begin to train, something shifts. Not instantly, not dramatically, but subtly. The same situation appears and your reaction is different. The same pressure arises and you don't move the same way because now there is space, a small gap between what you feel and what you do. And that gap is where power begins. This is the first truth. You are not broken, you are untrained. And once you understand that, anxiety stops being something you fear and becomes something you can reshape. Part 2, the body comes first, strength before calm. Most people try to fix their mind first. They read more, they think more, they try to stay positive. They sit in silence, hoping the chaos inside them will somehow fade away. But it doesn't, because the mind does not stabilize itself through thought. It stabilizes through evidence. And that evidence comes from the body. Here's what most people never realize. You cannot build a calm mind on top of a weak body. Because when the body is weak, the mind has nothing to trust. Think about it. When your body is tired, your thoughts become negative. When your body is uncomfortable, your patience disappears. When your body is under stress, your emotions take over. Not because your mind failed, but because your body could not support it. It's like trying to create a still lake on unstable ground. No matter how calm the surface looks, it will always be disturbed. This is why Miyamoto Musashi never separated the body from the mind. He didn't sit and think his way into strength. He trained relentlessly in discomfort, in fatigue, in conditions most people would avoid, not to appear strong, but to become stable. Because he understood something simple. When the body learns to endure, the mind stops panicking. When the body proves it can handle pressure, the mind stops imagining danger. That is the shift. You don't convince your mind to be calm. You show it through action. There's a difference between believing you can handle something and knowing it. And that knowing comes from repetition, from physical proof. Imagine two people. Both are facing pressure, both feel anxiety, but one of them has trained their body to move under discomfort. They have pushed through fatigue. They have acted without waiting for motivation. They have done what is hard over and over again. The other has only thought about it. Who do you think the mind will trust? The one with proof. Always. Because the body does not lie. This is why physical training is not about fitness. It is about authority over yourself. You send your mind a message. I move even when it's hard. I act even when I don't feel like it. I don't stop because of discomfort. And over time, your mind begins to follow, not because you forced it, but because it has seen enough evidence to believe. This is how anxiety begins to change, not by disappearing, but by losing control. You feel it, but you don't obey it. You notice it, but you still move. And every time you do that, you weaken its power. There's a simple practice, so simple. Most people ignore it. Choose one physical action, something that requires effort, and do it every day. No conditions, no negotiation, no exceptions. It doesn't matter what it is. Push-ups, running, cold showers. What matters is that you do it when you don't feel like it. Especially when you don't feel like it, because that is the moment you are rewriting your system. That is the moment you are no longer reacting. You are training, and slowly something changes. The same discomfort that used to stop you no longer has the same power. The same resistance that used to control you starts to fade, not because it's gone, but because you become stronger than it. This is the second truth. Calm does not come first. Strength does. And once the body learns to endure, the mind finally has something it can rely on, something solid, something real. And from that foundation, a different kind of person begins to emerge. Not someone who feels no fear, but someone who is no longer controlled by it. Part 3, non-reaction, the still mind. There is a moment so small that most people never notice it, but that moment controls everything. It is the space between what happens and what you do next. Something goes wrong, someone says something, pressure appears, and instantly something inside you moves. Your chest tightens, your thoughts accelerate, your body prepares to react. You don't choose it, it happens automatically, and for most people, that's where it ends. They feel something and they become it. They feel anger, they speak with anger. They feel fear, they freeze. They feel pressure, they collapse. There is no gap, no control, only reaction. And over time, that reaction becomes identity. I'm just like this. I can't help it. That's how I am. But that is not who you are. That is what you've practiced repeatedly, unconsciously. This is what Musashi understood at a level most never reach. He wrote, in the moment of battle, your mind should be the same as when you're drinking tea. No disturbance, no urgency, no emotional surge, only presence. Think about that, not in silence, not in comfort, in chaos. The mind does not move. That is not natural. That is trained because the first reaction will always come. The tension, the impulse, the emotional surge. You cannot stop that. But what you do after that, that is where power exists. Most people never go beyond the first reaction. They live inside it. But there is another way, a quieter way. When something happens, you don't react. You observe, you feel the heartbeat, you notice the tension, you see the thoughts forming, and you do nothing. No judgment, no suppression, no escape, just awareness. At first, it feels unbearable because everything inside you wants to move, to speak, to defend, to release, but you don't. You stay. And in that stillness, something shifts. You begin to see clearly, not through emotion, but through presence. You realize something simple but powerful. You are not the reaction. You are the one watching it. And that separation changes everything. Because once you see the reaction, you no longer have to obey it. You can choose, and choice is where control begins. There is a difference most people never understand. Feeling is automatic. Reacting is optional, but only if you train it. One pause at a time, one moment of awareness at a time, until one day something happens. And for the first time, nothing inside you rushes. No panic, no internal chaos, no need to respond immediately, only clarity. You see the situation for what it is, not what you feel. And from that clarity, you act, not emotionally, not impulsively, but precisely, like a blade that only moves when necessary. That is power, not loud, not aggressive, but unshakable, because when nothing inside you is forcing you to react, nothing outside you can control you. This is the third step, not removing emotion, but removing the need to respond to it. Because the moment you stop reacting, you become unpredictable. And when you are no longer predictable, you become dangerous, not to others, but to every situation that once controlled you. Part 4, exposure, training under pressure. There is one truth that most people spend their entire lives avoiding. You do not become strong in comfort. You become strong when you are forced to face what you want to escape. But most people never stay there long enough. They touch discomfort and immediately pull back. They feel resistance and they stop. They experience pressure and they retreat. And then they wonder why nothing changes. Because they mistake exposure for suffering. They believe discomfort is something to avoid. But discomfort is the training. It is the only place where your system is forced to adapt. Think about it like this. A muscle does not grow when it is comfortable. It grows when it is stressed, pushed, challenged, forced beyond what it is used to. And your mind is no different. If you always stay within what feels easy, you remain exactly the same. But the moment you step into what feels difficult, something begins to change. Slowly. At first, your system resists. It complains, it negotiates, it tries to pull you back. This is too much. This isn't necessary. You can stop. And most people listen because that voice sounds like protection. But it is not protection. It is limitation. It is your current level trying to keep you where it is comfortable. This is what Miyamoto Musashi refused to accept. He did not train in ideal conditions. He did not wait to feel ready. He placed himself in difficulty again and again and again because he understood something simple. You don't adapt to what you understand. You adapt to what you repeatedly experience. There is a story, not extraordinary, but real. A man decides he will do one thing every day, no matter what. Push-ups, no gym, no schedule, no perfect condition, just his body and the floor. The first few days, easy. Then the resistance begins: fatigue, discomfort, excuses. Then life interferes: travel, that are illness, stress. This is where most people stop because their discipline was never real, it was conditional. But this time, he continues, not perfectly, but consistently. 20 becomes 10, 10 becomes 5, but never 0. Never 0. Because the moment you allow 0, you are no longer training strength. You are training escape. Days pass, then weeks, then something shifts, not outside, inside. The discomfort is still there, but it no longer controls him. The resistance still appears, but it no longer decides because he has done something most people never do. He stayed long enough for his system to adapt. This is the part most people never reach because they quit right before the transformation. They restart, they stop, they repeat, always beginning, never becoming. But when you stay, when you continue through discomfort, your system changes. What once felt hard becomes normal. What once stopped you loses its power. And this is where anxiety begins to fade. Not because you avoided it, but because you faced it so many times, it no longer feels like a threat. This is exposure, not one time, not randomly, repeated, deliberate, unavoidable, until your body and your mind no longer react the same way. This is how pressure becomes power, not by thinking differently, but by experiencing it until it no longer controls you. So stop avoiding discomfort, stop waiting for things to feel easier, because they won't. You only become stronger. And the moment you do, what once felt overwhelming becomes irrelevant. This is the fourth step. Not understanding pressure, but living inside it until it no longer has power over you. Part 5, Identity Shift, Becoming Unbreakable. There is a point that very few people ever reach, a point where discipline is no longer something you do. It becomes what you are. Up until now, you have been trying to act, trying to stay consistent, trying to control yourself. And as long as you are trying, there is always a chance you will stop. Because trying implies resistance. It implies effort. It implies that at any moment you can choose not to. That is why most people fail, not because they don't know what to do, but because their actions are still optional. They wake up and decide, should I do it today? And that question is the problem. Because the moment something becomes a decision, it becomes negotiable, and anything that can be negotiated can be avoided. But there is another level, a quieter level, where that question no longer exists. You don't ask if you should train, you train. You don't ask if you should act, you act. Not because you feel like it, not because you are motivated, but because there is no alternative. It's like breathing. You don't wake up and ask, should I breathe today? You just do, because it is not separate from you. This is the shift from action to identity, from effort to inevitability. This is what Miyamoto Musashi reached. He did not become disciplined. He became someone who could not be undisciplined. There was no gap between who he was and what he did. No internal conflict, no hesitation, no debate, only alignment. And when there is no conflict inside you, there is nothing left to break. Think about what usually breaks people. It's not the situation, it's the internal resistance, the hesitation, the doubt, the negotiation. I don't feel like it. This is too hard. Maybe I should stop. That is what weakens you, not the pressure, but the conversation inside your head. But when your identity changes, that conversation disappears. Because there is no longer a version of you that chooses comfort. There is only one version, the one that moves forward, always. At that point, something strange happens. You stop needing motivation. You stop seeking validation. You stop measuring progress, because none of that matters anymore. You are not trying to become stronger. You are simply living as someone who is, and that cannot be taken away. You can lose results, you can lose status, you can lose everything external, but you cannot lose what you have become, because it is no longer something you maintain, it is something you are. This is what it means to become unbreakable. Not that life becomes easy, not that pressure disappears, but that nothing inside you collapses anymore. No matter what happens, you remain stable, present, unmoved, like a mountain in a storm. The wind hits, the rain falls, but the mountain does not respond. That is the final transformation, from anxiety to power, from reaction to control, from effort to identity. And once you reach this level, you don't go back, because there is nothing left in you that wants to. At the end of this journey, you begin to see something clearly. Anxiety was never the problem. It was never something you needed to destroy. It was something that revealed where you were untrained. Every moment of hesitation, every wave of pressure, every feeling of overwhelm was not there to stop you. It was there to show you your current limit. And for most people, that is where they turn away. They feel discomfort and they retreat. They feel pressure and they escape. They feel fear and they stop. And slowly, they build a life around avoidance. A life where they only act when it feels right. A life where they only move when it is comfortable. A life that looks safe but remains small. But you've seen something different. You've seen that strength is not built by avoiding discomfort. It is built by stepping into it again and again and again until your body adapts, until your mind stabilizes, until your reactions fade, until what once felt overwhelming becomes ordinary. This is the path that Miyamoto Musashi walked. Not a path of motivation, not a path of inspiration, but a path of training. Relentless, uncomfortable, unavoidable. He did not try to feel stronger. He became stronger by removing everything that made him weak. And that is the truth most people never accept. You don't need more confidence. You don't need more knowledge. You don't need more time. You need to remove what is holding you back. The hesitation, the delay, the reaction, the need for approval, the identity you keep protecting, because once those are gone, there's nothing left to slow you down, nothing left to break you. And at that point, something changes. You no longer try to act. You act. You no longer try to be disciplined. You are disciplined. You no longer try to control your mind. There is nothing left inside you that resists. That is the level most people will never reach. Not because it is impossible, but because it demands something they are not willing to give. Comfort. Because to become unbreakable, you must first be willing to be uncomfortable, repeatedly, deliberately, without escape. So now the question is no longer, can you do this? The question is, are you willing to be trained this way? Are you willing to face what you've been avoiding? Are you willing to remove what you've been holding on to? Because the moment you do, everything changes. Not instantly, but permanently. And one day, you will find yourself in the same situations that once overwhelmed you. The same pressure, the same uncertainty, the same weight. But this time, nothing inside you moves. No panic, no hesitation, no internal collapse, just presence, just clarity, just control. And in that moment, you will understand you didn't eliminate anxiety. You outgrew it. And what replaced it is something far more powerful, a state that cannot be broken.